Welcome to the County Business Club's podcast, hosted by Sam Thomas and powered by Picture Book Films.
Right, welcome to the next episode of the County Business Talks podcast. I'm delighted to welcome my special guest today. Been appointed as Chestnut Tree House Children's Hospice in 2009-2012. He's the chairman of Brighton Juice 107.2, winner of Outstanding Brightonian of the Year 2011 Sussex Business Awards, winner of the Greatest Contribution to Sussex Charity at the 2016 Sussex Business Awards, winner of Greatest Contribution to Sussex in 2018 Argus Achievement Awards. He's been honoured in the inaugural 2018 Brighton Power 100, honoured in celebrating the Sussex Top 100 in the county 2019 and 2020. Recently appointed honorary patron of the Rocking Horse Children's Charity in June 2021, following up nearly a decade as their chief executive. He's the founder of the Best of British series of events that has raised over $750,000 for local charities since 2009. I have great pleasure in welcoming one of Brighton and Sussex's most inspirational business figures, and someone I'm lucky enough to also call a very close friend. So, Ryan Hill, welcome.
Sam, thank you for having me. Good morning, Wembley.
Mate, we ain't got that much time for the podcast now, mate, after all those achievements. So, when you recant it like that, I'm thinking, no, it must be definitely talking about someone else. Oh, mate, it's incredible. That's why when I started the podcast, obviously getting someone on like yourself is amazing, because this is what it's all about. As not only a friend, but obviously a true inspiration, the stuff that you've achieved over the time. So, which is great, mate. Look, as always, I just want to delve straight in if we can.
Yeah. Thanks for having me,
mate. Great. So let's crack on. Just tell listeners a little bit about yourself and your business journey, where it all started.
God, where did it all begin? I take myself back. Well, like many people out there, it all started with a bit of fate, really. Take you back. I studied history at university, so I've got a history degree. So Excellent. Everyone looks at me at a pub quiz in the history round, and I've never got one right. But I always wanted to be a teacher. And I don't know whether I trace that back to some element of wanting to, I don't know, not inspire. Well, maybe it was to lead or inspire. I don't know. But I always wanted to be a teacher. And then, like all budding commercial sales people, having finished university and being royally skint, struggling to pay the rent in my flat in New Malden, having finished university at Kingston, I fell into a sales role. Monday nights in The Guardian used to publish all the media jobs. And I ended up picking up a graduate training job at Reed Business Information, part of Reed Elsevier, and they were based in Sutton. And I've graduated in the July and started there in the August, back in 98, 97, 98. And that was the start of it. So that started by selling in B2B magazines. Everything from Computer Weekly, Personnel Today, Farmers Weekly. That was great. Selling to those different industries, flogging a few tractors. But that was the beginning of the sales journey, really, with Reed Elsevier. And that was the beginning of the media connection. So that was sort of the publishing start. And then sort of poacher turned gamekeeper, where I went to work for one of my clients that advertised with me. Yeah. And they were based down in Burgess Hill. And that was on the back of working on the Personnel Today magazine. And that was a great company, still there now. It was Capital Software at the time. It's now Capital International. Yeah. It's owned and managed by Karen Silk, former Sussex Businesswoman of the Year. And they're a great firm. So I kind of was on that journey back home, to Sussex. Sure. Back to Brighton. And then from there, after a couple of years there, I finally got a break into radio. So it's lovely to be back in a studio again, Sam.
Mate, you look at home here, I must admit.
I do enjoy it. And that was at the Great Southern FM back in the day, down in Portslade. And that was where I'd say the career kind of took off from. I can track that element back to that moment in radio.
Okay. And then, then you've gone from there from radio, and obviously, you know, we've gone through the list of various different bits and pieces you've done over the years, and obviously being a MD, chairman, CEO. But did you, like, obviously running your own business now with obviously Best, but did you always have that from a young age? Did you always think, I'm going to run my own business at some point? Or like you said, initially you're saying about, thought about maybe being a teacher and so was there any, from a young age, even at university, was there any thoughts in your mind about that entrepreneurial mindset?
I think so, and I think you can join the pieces of the puzzle back in retrospect and hindsight a lot more. But I was brought up in a family-run business in Sussex, my dad's business, so that was around me as a kid growing up, and my siblings as well. So it was always that feeling of, we were brought up on a hard work ethic, if you like. We all worked within the family business, and I think that did stick with me. I think I was very fortunate that when I made the move from Southern FM to Juice, and I became managing director within a couple of years, I was MD of Juice at 29.
Wow.
And that brought with it its own challenges in the market. But there was a sense of, the moment I became managing director, I felt like it was the closest thing to having my own business.
Of course,
and that's what the board at the time sort of wanted me to do, really lead from the front. They were there for what they should be there for strategic input and whatnot, but whether it was managing director or CEO, I felt it was the closest thing to having complete ownership, particularly at the SME level that both those institutions took. So I think, there was always that burning desire, but I feel even through a working career, albeit I was reporting into boards for the majority of my career, it at times it did feel like I was running it.
From an outsider, I guess, like, I first met you when I come to Brighton, 12 years ago, when I had the salon, and I think
before our barnets went.
When we had long locks and we was looking good. But I get, look, from an impression from the outside was that you was, I guess, the owner of Juice, I guess, and then even being the face of it and the front man as MD, and I guess even then flipping that and going on to as a CEO of Rocking Horse, again, you was the face that for the last 8 years have been the face and the head of Rocking Horse as a chief exec. So I suppose, like you say, owning and being a founder of your own business is a certain element, but the mindset of a MD or CEO, there's so many similarities. If you're running you're running the ship, basically, aren't you?
Yeah, I think the desire to always want to be the leader or the captain of anything I ever did helped me be a better MD and CEO.
Yeah,
I never had an ivory tower complex. I didn't want to do anything other than lead from the front. As MD of Juice, I'll be the one on a Sunday morning of the Brighton Marathon lugging the speakers down to Madeira Drive. And the same as at Rocking Horse was always visible, and I think that it was instinctive, but it did me no harm in terms of getting complete buy-in from the teams that I ran when they saw their leader involved in that way, and that's what I tried to create culturally.
That's it, because this is a big thing. I mean, we'll go a bit off piece, but culture is something that I talk about on every podcast because I find it fascinating. I think someone as a business owner running different businesses over the years, I found, especially at the salon, I struggled with that. I struggled not being a hairdresser, but struggling to go in. So, like you say, going into those environments and creating cultures. Do you think that some of that has come from, like you said, learnings from watching your dad run a business and maybe a culture he created within companies?
I think sometimes you can get things a little bit overcomplicated, and if you strip it right back, well, first of all, I'm a very simple person, and I just think if you strip it right back, it's not difficult. And I think that things can get in the way, be it red tape or bureaucracy or overthinking, that can really muddy the water. And when you strip it right back to being in the right place at the right time with the right message, with the right team, with the right product, it's simple to say that's all you need, but that's all you need. So if you break it down, either your team's wrong or your staffing's wrong, or your product's wrong, or your branding's wrong, and you've got to move quickly to fix those things. So I think very quickly, I realised very quickly, what's the point of surrounding yourself with a bad product or an underperforming team I'm not talking about an underperforming team that didn't need a helping hand. Nothing better as a business leader than having somebody in your team that was struggling that you've helped turn around to be successful. I'm talking about the time wasters and the shirkers.
There's a few of them.
So I think sort of weeding those out and building your team how you wanted to see yourself, and having captains and generals on the pitch with you. Absolutely, but that all does come back. Answering to bring it back to your question about would I always wanted to run my own entity completely. Yeah, I think there was a sense of inevitability about it, and it was only a matter of time. Yeah, it was just about timing.
Yeah, and when okay,
like in the middle of a pandemic, starting an events company. Perfect timing.
I can't wait to get onto that one. It is. Well, look, we've obviously, as we listed at the start of the intro as, to see your achievements over your time as MD, as CEO, and various different entities that you have run. Tell me, what's your proudest moment over your career, and what was your most successful? Are they the same, or would they be different?
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because you don't want to leave anything or anyone out or any group out. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think they are two different answers. And using those words directly of proudest and successful. So what does that mean to me? And I guess the thing running through all this theme, even as I'm talking to you, is family. Yeah. And that's going back to the crux of why I do what I do, done what I've done. Yeah. And that's nice for me to realise. So whether it's being inspired by my dad, and then my family now, my wife and kids inspiring me now. Yeah. So when you talk about proudest moments, it's got to be things like when my son was poorly before I went to the charity. Yeah. And then I don't know, finishing the London Marathon when a couple of years earlier I'd had an ankle operation, was told I'd never run again. Fitness-wise, couldn't run a bath then, but I gave it. That was it. I was never going to be beaten from that. And crossing that line down the Mall, completing the London Marathon with my family there at the finish line. Yeah. And then just down from the Mall, I think one of them for me. You think about family again. I remember my granddad back in the 60s getting an invitation for his charity work to Buckingham Palace for the garden party, and in 2017. 50, 60 years later, on the back of the work with the Golden Jubilee at Rocking Horse, I was fortunate enough to go and see the Queen at Buckingham Palace, invited to the garden party. So in terms of proud moments, I can sort of trace it back to family related, which makes me feel
that's amazing. And again, you touched on there about, and again, what we delve into the podcast about mindset, but that's I've run a marathon as well, and that thought process of running 26 miles is not an easy feat. No. But to also be injured and go, right, I'm told I can't do a marathon. So much of that mindset is, well, I won't be beaten. If that's what I want to achieve, and I'm going to get there. That strong mindset, you can relate that so much to business.
100%, which is why the second part of the question about proudest versus most successful, it can often come out of adversity. Yeah. And you're right, if you set out on that path, you almost expect the barriers along the way. It's never going to be a smooth journey. So you can liken that marathon run to running a business, absolutely for sure. Yeah. And in terms of the most successful on the business front directly, I guess I think the Rocking Horse's Golden Jubilee and its 50th year from start to finish.
Incredible,
a year of pre-planning, a year of post sort of shoulder years, and then the main year itself. With a team of 7, including all of the back office, to raise just under £1 million that year.
That's incredible.
That was I guess that can be deemed. I'll allow myself to allow it to be successful.
100. Well, look, obviously my feelings of Rocking Horse, and how amazing I think the cherry is, and it was phenomenal. I think to see that year and what you guys achieved, and again a perception, I guess, from many people from outside Rocking Horse because of your leadership, you being the face of it, and the team that you surrounded yourself with. In people's mindsets were probably like, like me, Rocking Horse must have lots of staff. Must have, like, you know, look at what they've made, £1 million across all these different events and the different bits and pieces that you've done. You're everywhere and you're doing stuff and as a team. But then you go, I'll come into the office. I remember when we done the 50 year for SBT. We done the front cover, which was my first issue, which was amazing. But I was like, wow, this is a fairly small office with 7 staff. And we
had four fundraisers, 2 of which were part time. Myself as CEO, a finance director, and PR and comms. That was part time. So that was it. And people used to come to us and say, "Oh, is this just your events team, or is this your fundraising team? And where are the rest of them?" Because we'd always get put up against other charities in the space. And we always said, it's true of most sectors not to slag off your competition, particularly in the children's charity market. You're not going to win many fans who start going around putting the knife in. But certainly a lot of the market perceived us and some other charities in the space as being very comparable. Yeah. And people thinking very often that we were 50, 60, 70 strong, probably because of the brand or the profile that we helped create. Yeah. But the other thing I'd say, and a lot of your listeners will relate to this as business leaders, people only see the cherry on top of the icing on the cake and therefore can get sucked into thinking it's easy. Yeah. I'd like to take people back to 1st of September 2012 when I first walked into Rocking Horse on day one. Yeah. And the success that I wanted to achieve happened 5 years later in 2017 at that Golden Jubilee. And it's that piece that's really interesting when you've got to go in and what you inherit. And I love a sporting analogy. I love the football. I might try and throw about 80 in the next 45 minutes. But it was, you're inheriting a team with the greatest of respect to predecessors and forebearers, but you're inheriting a team that sort of bottom of League 2 or just about to go out the league. And, I don't mind saying this now because I think it's pretty much common knowledge. Rocking Horse's future was in doubt. Yeah, sure, and it had been going 45 years then and had an almighty impact in the Sussex community and the building of the new children's hospital. And what a sad tale that would have been should anything have happened. So to go from there to, in our opinion, as our dressing room, to go and win the European Cup in relative terms, pound for pound, we like that one.
That in itself is incredible. So how do you go in did you go in with a clear mindset on that first day? You walk in and go, I know what I want to achieve.
Yes.
From Rocking Horse, I'm coming in as Rocking Horse CEO, and I know where I want to get this. And I had 3
resignations by 5 o'clock.
Really?
And I think that, to me, just told me so much. It was right, day one. This is how it's going to be. I will promise you'll have an amazing journey, but this is how it's going to be from now on. And it really sorted the wheat from the chaff out that quickly, that honest to God, with it. But by the end of that week, half the team had said, right, basically, this isn't for me. Wow. Fine. Because it proved, in a way, talked about workers and shirkers earlier. Yeah. And it goes on in any sector, and I'm not certainly putting the boot into the charity sector. But if you want to put your feet up and attempt to coast, there are some vessels out there that might allow you to do it. That goes back to why would you get up in the morning and go to work and not have a winning mentality, a creative culture, a culture of expression, but ultimately of success. Amazing. Otherwise, let's pack up and go home. So some of them were, it was, man the barricades, here we go, over the top, and loving it. That's what they needed. So retained the good staff. And took them on that journey. And the ones that did me a massive favour, the ones that said, so this for a game of soldiers, this sounds like work, I'm off.
That's so inspiring because, again, for me, to be able to, I guess, have the balls to just go, you go into I'm taking on this role, I know where I want to get this, and this is the vision. It's a shared vision because like you said, you shared it with, and I guess that's half the thing, isn't it? Some people, maybe as leaders, maybe not the greatest leaders, they will go in, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and blah, 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 and it almost becomes a dictatorship, whereas where you go in and go, I know what the vision is, we're all on a journey together, let's get behind it. If we do, we're going to have a great journey. It's not going to be easy, it's going to be ups and downs.
And they did, and they shared the successes.
Yeah, of course.
And we took the losses together, but we shared I saw myself as one of the team that happened to be the CEO.
Yeah,
and that was how I wanted to embed myself within that. And that is that leadership piece. I was really, really interested in that, and always migrated towards that area. A lot of people didn't want to put their hand up. A lot of people are very, very good lieutenants and number twos, and they're very happy there.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know, where it comes from, I don't know. Probably my again, back to family.
Yeah.
But I played football, I was the captain.
Yeah.
I went to the radio station, I've got my eye on the next person's job, and I'm MD by 29.
Yeah.
And it just always happened like that. And it must have been that I just have this drive that I want to. I don't see the point of being involved and invested in something unless you really want to take it as far as you can.
That's amazing, and I think that for me is exactly like you said. Similar for myself. I think anything I've done, I never want to do half-hearted. If I'm in something, I'm in it, and I want to give it 100%, and I will work 20 hours a day if I have to make that happen. If that's the situation, because I'm invested in. Like you said, you want to be passionate about what you're doing. You want to get up and have that sort of drive, and I think people will talk to business owners, and I hear people like mates and stuff. Oh, you run your own business. One, they think you've got loads of money. Yep. Two, they think, you just play golf or you do what you want to do. Yep. Don't see.
You do, don't you?
Mate, if I did, I'd be much better at handicap than I am. Bloody hell! I need a bit more practice. I need to be there with Dodge doing a bit more. But I guess it's that, like you said, it's that mindset, that drive, and that determination that you can't. If you haven't got that. Forget about it. In my opinion, you're not going to be able to run a business. You're not going to be able to achieve any level of success. And success is different in different forms, isn't it? Like we all look at success in a different way. Some people look at it on their bank balance and how much money they've got. Some people look at what lifestyle they've created.
Yep.
Success.
Well, success in that instance. I know we're jumping around, but no, in that instance, success for me was to prevent the charity from going under.
Yeah.
I never professed that to the market.
No.
But that was my first goal, if you like.
Yeah.
So, right, that was success. So, protect it, first of all.
Yeah.
But you're right. And I guess the second thing you used earlier about that sort of dictatorial slant. And I guess, yes, you can have all the drive in the world. The second part of it, and even more importantly, is how do you implement that and impart that onto your team to get them on board with you? Because if you're have all the drive and passion in the world, but you're a bit of an arsehole with it, no one's going to want to come on that journey.
No.
So exactly. I enjoyed the second. I knew I had that.
Yeah.
Okay, how do I get
enhance it?
Everybody on the ship with me? And that comes back to having the right people around you, and trust and loyalty. We had people that worked with me during that period of time. 5, 6, 7 years of service. Yeah. Very, very tight team, and that ultimately steered the ship in the right direction.
And again, like you said, culture, isn't it? You created that was the culture that you created within there, and people bought into that, and that's mate, it's great. I mean, look, it takes us nicely actually on, because we talk the success side of things. Obviously, as business owners, we face a fair amount of challenges, some ups and downs, some failures. I've been there. I know that situation, but talk to me about what challenges you faced over the years. Yeah, we've talked a little bit offline, so I know there's some, and I've seen it on some of the journey you have been through, but some challenges, failures. Talk to me about them.
They make you, don't they? Yeah. You speak to the best sports people, or even watching the Olympics at the moment, and you see the guy yesterday, the boxing, wouldn't put the silver medal on. He said, you lose gold, you don't win silver. And it was how he was dealing with that failure. And I'm like, wow, it was really, it was quite emotional to watch. But you think, that guy, you back him next in Paris in 2024. He'll use all of that experience
100%,
to get into gold. And I think that's any failure that you experience. It's how you deal with it. I know that's a common trait, but it is. It's how you deal with it, how you respond to each failure or downturn. What sticks out for me was 2008, 9, 10, that period of the 2008 financial crash. I was running a commercial radio station at the time, which was Juice, and hopefully I won't get done for anything I'm going to say on here, but it was all above board. No, but we were only one of the last 17 radio stations in the country that were independently owned at that time, and we'd been fighting off the big boys coming in for purchases all the time. And when that hit, you think, wow, how much longer have we got? And that was very, very, very tough. And having to have very difficult conversations when you're dealing with people that you've got to lay off. Yeah. And you think about their families and livelihoods and all the rest of it.
Yeah, sure.
And that sits with you as the owner director. part, that sits with you. They're, when you think about what keeps you up at night, that kind of stuff. So when you're running any entity and something happens like that crash, and most recently with the pandemic, wow, how much can you actually control? You can be as watertight as possible so that when these things happen, you're more likely to ride the storm. But when you say about times in the career where it's been hairy, that I immediately go to that first crash that I was involved with of 2008. So to steer it through that and come out the other side, always looking for the positive, was miraculous.
What did you do then with the team and stuff like that at the time?
Cry, shook, put myself on air. Lost 80,000 listeners overnight. No. Well, it's like you can draw similarities to the pandemic. Well, where are you going to go?
Yeah.
Want to get another job in radio at the moment? Well, good luck. So it was batten down the hatches. It was, all right, we either go down this path, or that's it, or hand the keys back. And thankfully, I have to say at this point, and I know many of your listeners are, but the support from the Sussex Business Community. When an entity like that, and there are, whether it be the cricket club, the football club, the radio station, whoever it might be, if somebody is struggling like that, and you call on their support, they were incredible at that time.
That's amazing.
They could have all pulled all their campaigns immediately overnight. But when I answer your question of how do you overcome that, it comes back to how you've been for the previous X amount of years. If you've been an absolute so-and-so, they're more likely to not support you in that time. But because of hopefully the goodwill and the credibility that your team builds up, when something bites, they're more likely to show forbearance and goodwill and stick with you. As opposed to, I'm sorry, you've treated me like that over the year. You can off you go.
I totally agree with you, and I think, and that goodwill and that you can pour on that for certain things, but it's you as an individual, the relationship you've built over that period of time. And a similar type of thing, like I think the Sussex Business Community is amazing. I've been, with the Essex twang, which I can't get rid of. I've been here for nearly 12 years now.
Really?
Wouldn't know it.
Hint of Welsh,
But for me, I come down and I can't actually imagine, one, living anywhere else, but two, running a business in it. I've been fortunate, I guess, people like yourself and the people I've met within the Sussex Business Community, that supportive nature that is there. If, like you said, as long as you're not, you try and be, always promise myself whatever level of business I would run, however I do it, just try and do stuff with integrity, try and be honest, try and be a good person, not screw anyone over. I think if you stick to them values, generally people are going to support when you go through
I think we have seen that, haven't we, in the pandemic? Not mention any names at all, because I feel so sorry for anyone whose business has struggled. But there's certainly been a correlation between those that were close to the line before March 2020. And it's horrible to put it in these terms, but something like a global pandemic comes along, and you're thinking, well, we're not riding that storm. So we might even see it going forward when with furlough ending. Horrible expression, but it's one from the media that a lot of these businesses are on life support, and when furlough ends, you might see more of them go. So it's we're very lucky down here that if you conduct yourself in the right way, the wagons will circle and you will get that support. And any failing that I've had in my career, I think either you look at your nearest and dearest first of all, and then your network, and you pull through.
No, I agree, and it's interesting. Like, just touching quickly, obviously, on the failing side of things, is something that we don't like to talk about generally as people. We go out and meet people, you don't generally go straight in and talk about, I failed at this. I remember finding it really difficult when I had to shut the salon. 3 years I ran it, 7 days a week. I was there every day. I travelled 2 years from Essex commuting, and I found it was a horrible feeling going in that day and having to tell 10 staff that, I've got to shut the doors, and it was a horrible thing. But I remember at that point, I sat there and I read something that come up on my LinkedIn that said something along the lines of the rules of success, and the first one was accepting and understanding failure. And I think once you do that, straight away I click, okay, it's a terrible situation. I didn't want to be in that position. I don't want to ever be in that position again. But the amount I learned from that, and it's taking them learnings from failing. I think even like we've obviously got kids. I don't know how you feel, but it's almost not encouraging them to fail. We don't want that, but not shirking away from failure and not looking at failure in a way. It's a learning
Not
curve.
that I did too much prep, Sam, because you know me. But one of my 2 notes that I made: don't be afraid to fail. And it's absolutely true. And you know, it's a well trodden path, isn't it? But you look at anybody from Richard Branson to Simon Cowell or anyone else you want to look at, the first thing that they say in any of they were bankrupt 4 times by the time he was 30. Whatever. So not being afraid to fail, better to try, definitely.
Yeah, I'm of that. I'd rather, like you say, you'd rather give something, and that's what I try and tell the kids, and I hope the next generation, there's like, even from this podcast, I want it to be that we get that message out that it's okay, look, it's better to give something a go. And
absolutely. And I'll say something now. I was speaking on this business entrepreneurial course at Brighton College. And Brighton College, by the way, fantastic institution if you're listening. But I have to say, I'm not going to get sued, Sam, don't worry. But I had to say, when I was speaking, I kind of got one of the only times, I know I can talk a bit, but it's one of the only times I kind of got the old little, okay, you're done now, like the old hook. Because I started to talk about how these league tables were overtaking these kids that have been pumped up on Red Bull and Pro Plus to try to get through their exams, where there was a culture that 95% wasn't good enough because it needed to be 98.5%, or 90% wasn't good enough because it needed to be 95%. And I just said, no, because if you go through business and when you have your own businesses, you take an 80% conversion rate all day long. Most of us would take a 50% conversion rate. So I think you're right. I think there's a massive amount of pressure on what success and failure sort of looks like to the next generation. Don't be afraid to fail. Give it a go. But don't be told that, you know, 4 A's aren't enough because they should have been 4 A stars. I'm totally against that.
Mate, I'm exactly the same. Look, you know, I know I don't want to go too off piece, but with the education system, that's something that we can, you know, maybe we'll save for episode
exactly.
the next round. But
someone in who knows what they're talking about on that one. But no, that's my instinct and belief on it. I think it scares them.
Because I think that side of it, that even for me, and I'm maybe, you know, speaking out of turn, but for me, the education system, I was never great at school. You know, I'd done A levels, I'd done okay, got some reasonable GCSE, but I'd never went on to university. It was never academically. I wasn't really. I didn't like the exam thing and stuff like that. Just wasn't my thing. I wasn't great at it. But I think the beauty now is that entrepreneurship is encouraged a bit more in school. I've been in and done some mentoring and stuff, and I've talked about bits and pieces. But I think I'd love that. For my kids even to come to me and say, if they've got something they want to do, where they go, I want to go to university because I want to be a doctor or a lawyer and I've got to get a degree to get to that level, great, I will encourage that. But if they want to go to university just because they're not sure what to do, I'd rather them come to me maybe and go, look, I've got this idea, I want to try this maybe. And then because it's not just necessarily that for me, that system of we're going to test you, and if you haven't passed that test at that level, then you failed, you're not good. I don't know.
Certainly, the impact can be far more damaging. And I think hopefully we're starting to see some change there. Hopefully.
I mean, just before we move on to the next question, we talked about obviously the thing at Juice with the thing, obviously. Just talk me through briefly the start of the pandemic, and obviously, you know, running a charity. That's talking about challenging times. That's got to be up there with.
How could I forget that one? No, it was. To put it into context, and I imagine, you know, yourself and many people that will be listening into this have the same experience. And you know, the 23rd of March, 2020 is ingrained in many people's minds, and when Bojo laid out the don't go to work tomorrow and the world's ending, honestly, it was, well, first thought was, go back, however many, nearly 10 years, shore up the charity. Rule number 1, make sure Rocking Horse is still here and exists. And therefore, it's about putting all the scaffolding around the team. But we lost 27 events overnight. Because you're told that you can't go anywhere, do anything, leave for emergencies only. 3 days after that, the Thursday night, we had 500 guests booked in at the Grand Hotel for an evening with Judi Dench.
Yeah, I was one of them.
There you go. There you go. My good luck charm strikes again. So that was then this Monday announcement. Because before that, there was still talk that, this might not be as bad as we're first fearing. I don't mind saying I was one of those that alleged super spreaders down at the Cheltenham Festival for 4 days in the middle of March that they're saying should have never happened. But I don't think many people saw just what was going to happen. But that was very, very tough on the charity. Income, obviously, through the floor. Yeah, sure. But again, what can you do? You have to control the controllables. I can't control that. That's a global pandemic. What I can do is this. So we went into overdrive with virtual fundraising. Yeah. We didn't furlough anybody. We were one of the only charities not to, because maybe, not naming names, some of those charities that had 800 fundraisers when they should have had 5, you can't but furlough them because you can't pay them all. Because we were lean and mean, we were able to stomach those costs still and kept everybody on. Because under the laws of the furlough programme, the moment you furlough anybody, they can't do any work.
Yeah,
so it was, I'd rather have 50% of fundraising income than nothing by furloughing them. Yeah. So to future-proof the charity, we took the decision to keep everybody on. Everyone was on full pay throughout the entire pandemic. Wow. And because we were there and because we were visible and doing everything online, everything virtual, we managed to turn over 680,000 from March 20 to April 21 in the last financial year. Wow. And that was a way, when you say about how do you respond to it, it hit very hard in those first few weeks, and then it turned into, right, we're going to really fly with this and do the best we can. And that was a nice thing to bow out on. Keeping everybody employed meant a lot. Keeping the charity going, and still giving away hundreds of thousands of pounds to the cause and the causes that the charity supports during that time. So that's
when they obviously need it just more than ever, I guess at that point.
Yeah. So that was I taking myself back to that in the March period, April. You do have the moments there. Yeah. What? How's this gonna?
But like you said, I guess back to the mindset side of it. You've got to have that strong mindset to just go, because there must be points where you go, God,
what would you do? What would you do? You've got to exactly. What are your options? And it's making those brave decisions, which business owners do. You either decide, well, we're going to pack up, or not. Yeah. Well, of course we're not. So okay, what does not look like? Yeah. So we're not doing that, are we? No. Right. Well, then this is the path. Yeah. So we'll get together virtually, of course. Yeah. And that was the other thing. Thrashing all of this out without ever seeing a member of your team. Yeah. And when it's a very face-to-face industry, funny enough, fundraising. So it's but again, the team and the culture that had been previously built. Yeah. So that when that struck, that may be in hindsight, and I'm thinking about it now in real time with you, that maybe helped us so much get through it.
Yeah, of course.
Would have been built the where we were culturally, and who was in the team when we arrived at that point.
Yeah, because you've built, like you said, you've built people that you want to. I don't want to use this analogy, I suppose, but you're almost going to war. We've got and who definitely. Do you want? And you've got a strong, solid team behind you that are
they were all honestly, they were all unbelievable. Yeah. The phrase, and I'm sure there's many other businesses out there that did exactly the same thing, and more power to them for it. But they, above and beyond the call of duty or going the extra mile or whatever you want to call it, every one of the team at that point of the charity, the easy option was to go and walk away. But because we're effectively we're small independent charity.
Sure.
We weren't part of a large national big boy and furlough everybody and sit at home for a year on 80%. It just wasn't an option. The charity wouldn't have survived. So it was genuine survival mode. But again, the support of the local community, including the business community, really stepped up.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, so what? This was something I wanted to find interesting. I'm not sure, but from running obviously a charity for 8 years, what's the differences between that running a charity and another business? So obviously MD of Juice and a commercial radio station. Do you run it as a? Do you still
Yeah.
run it? It's got to ultimately be still run as a business.
Yeah. No, I get asked that question a lot because it's a very obvious one to ask in terms of the differences, and it's always the same answer. You'd be amazed how similar it is. Goes back to what I said earlier when I was sort of walking through the, product, profile, branding, messaging to market, client base, team, staff, overheads, direct cost. I could be describing any SME, but I could very easily be describing Rocking Horse.
Sure.
The income was fundraising, the X's were the X's, your surplus is your profitability, but in the charity world you give all that away. Fantastic. And our job was to get that percentage in the pound as high as possible, which is why we kept the team to such a minimum. But in terms of running it, I guess I could break it down internally and externally. So externally, what are you and what you're trying to achieve? So we're a children's charity. So externally, absolutely. It was, bright colours and warm and fuzzy and the children's hospital and away you go. It was, and that's its ethos. But internally, I ran the fundraising team during my time at Rocking Horse like I ran a commercial radio sales team at Juice. Okay. Internally. So sure. I don't know whether I'm, peeking behind the curtain here, the Wizard of Oz. Like a load of complaints. It wasn't, slave labour. But no, I guess given the focus and the exposure to have more control and eyes on their own roles and what they were doing. So before I went to Rocking Horse, no fundraiser had any idea of what sort of the budget was for the charity. But it just, money came in or money didn't come in. And we had a count up at the end of the month, and that was what we were on. So I moved them very much into commercial way of thinking internally, strategically, and setting budgets and setting goals, and then looking after those good staff that all wanted to stay on the journey with it. So internally, absolutely running it the same. Externally, projecting, playing to the sector that you're in.
Sure. Because I guess like you said, the same going in with that, you're a vision, a goal that you need to achieve, and going, this is how we're going to get there. It's not going to be we're going to get there by going, let's see what comes in, and then we're doing like this. It's got to be, this is a goal. This is what to get to this stage. This is where we want to be for the 50-year anniversary, or 5-year plan, or this next 12 months, this next 6 months. But this is, and you can only really do, like you say, like any business does. What's your cash flow like? How does you
absolutely?
And
we doubled the income within 2 years, spending less to run the charity. So I moved the charity back into Brighton, with a very philanthropic landlord, which was fantastic, to reduce those overheads, and worked as much on expenditure. And when you say about running it, like we do with our own businesses, you can have all the profile and all the income in the world, but something comes along and hits you, you can't control it as much as you can control what's going out the other end. So I played a lot of effort on focusing on expenditure and bringing that down, and then at the same time increasing the income and the profile, and you're left with. So after a few years that I'd been there, the profit, the surplus was larger than the turnover before I went there.
Wow. So
in terms of running it, absolutely. And I'm sure this resonates with people listening in their businesses. Running a charity, the similarities are they really are prevalent.
Cool. Okay. So we're gonna move on now. Obviously, as people know you, and we can hear, I've known you for a long time. You're full of positive energy, drive, ambition. It's highlighted obviously in the awards and achievements that we've sort of discussed already. But before we go into that, I just want to talk to you about.
You're laughing. I'm nervous about what this question's going to be.
Only because I want to talk. So we've talked about obviously the charity, and you sort of decided to step down as CEO of Rocking Horse. After 8 years there, and then in the middle of a global pandemic, to launch your own members club, based on events.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. What in that sense?
I guess.
Where did you get to that stage? Well, I'm going to stop this now, which is an income and a role that I've done for this amount of time, and I'm going to start actually my own entity, my own business. But
on the face of it, it sounds madness, and my family all agreed that it was complete madness. I think to talk through the steps in the right order, I remember famously saying that I went to Rocking Horse for a couple of years back in 2012 to try to help turn the charity round and to get our son better. And the plan was that in around about 2014, I would then re-enter what I considered a natural home of the Sussex commercial world in the corporate sector. And then fast forward to 2021, and I'm thinking this was never really part of the plan. I was coming up for 9 years. It would have been 10 years next year, on a journey that I thought would be a couple of years.
Sure.
So I think that in hindsight, and being really honest now, after that length of time, it was during the first lockdown that maybe I started to think, get off the hamster wheel for half a second, and maybe think, well, what does the bigger picture look like for me? And going back to one of your earlier questions, that burning desire rose again. Well, maybe this is the time. Turned out to be the worst time in 300 years. But
as you mentioned earlier, timing is everything.
Timing is everything. But as it happens, the timing was everything, and it was right. I was absolutely adamant that two things: if I was going to do it, I was going to see it through to fruition 100% and give it everything. And secondly, and more importantly, ethically, I was never going to leave Rocking Horse in the Kazi. So after that much and how much it means to me still.
Sure.
So even though I started to think about that earlier on, I actually resigned in December of 2020 and gave an extra month's notice to the very end of the financial year on the 31st of March. To see that whole piece through of the core part of the pandemic and achieve those goals that we did during that time. So, and then I thought, well, okay, what am I going to do? And I just had a feeling that events wouldn't be away forever. But by just the way the market was going and the way that judging the landscape at the time, smaller events were far more likely to return sooner than the larger scale events. Not rocket science, but there still need to be a plan and implementation in place. So I've been operating Best of British events since 2009, and I've been doing them for a number of different charities, from the Special Olympics at Brighton and Hove to Chestnut Tree House, and of course to Rocking Horse. When I went to Rocking Horse as CEO, I said to them, look, it would be very odd for me if I didn't do Best of British for you, because I'm chief executive. So Rocking Horse benefited from that hugely, and will continue to do so this year. But I realised that those large-scale events were going to take a lot longer to come back. So the Best of British Members Club was almost born out of the larger scale Best of British events, but of its time during the pandemic. What we didn't factor on was in the early part of the year, what was the South African variant then coming and rearing its head and knocking everything back another 3 months. But now, where are we? We're in August. We are we're sold out for this year. We've had 3 events so far. We've had some fantastic speakers along, and in a very exclusive group. It's capped at 50 members. So if this thing lasts 100 years, it will never be more than 50 members. Amazing. And that's a decision that we took at the very, very outset. That, with respect, a lot of people use the word exclusive, and then it kind of creaks a little bit. And before you know it, something either works or is successful, and then there's 200 in there, and you lose the ethos of it. So there'll only ever be 50 members. Venues across Sussex, deals about town galore. You've got to be an owner, director, CEO to get involved, and invite only. But it's been going really well. I look back now and think, well, maybe the timing wasn't so bad.
You know what? I think I actually agree with you, and I think that I remember we had the conversation. I'm delighted that I'm a member, and it was great to get invited. but we obviously spoke in the January about it, and you, I know you'd alluded to me a little bit before about it, but we'd spoken in January about it, and thinking like, God, mate, and I guess part of me, honestly, there was an element of going, it's a little bit risky potentially, but being a people person, the people you were speaking to were the people that. Like people, we want to be out face to face. We want to be back in that environment. I wasn't like I embraced online and virtual events, great, and they've been fantastic. And I support and applaud people that have done them. Ultimately, I'd rather be in a room with people and sit there and build them relationships that I've done over the last 12 years in Sussex. And I think so you got the right people together at the right time where we're craving for that, and like you said, that first event at Malmaison, it was, you could tell almost the relief of people being in that room. We was there, everyone almost with smiles on their faces, just
it was
because you'd created something that this is what we're craving, and this is what, and it was great to be back to them live events. And I think, like you said, timing. On one side, you look at it and go, God, is he crazy doing something like that? On the other side, going, is it genius, perfect timing, really, in that sense?
And only time tells, and only time will tell. But going on the feedback and the appetite so far, it's worked really well. Where it's worked for me as well, it worked in harmony with the larger scale events. Of course. So the members club is for the individual member, but they will still take a table for their company to come and attend one of the larger scale events. Sure. So it can dovetail perfectly. And over the years, we'll look forward to welcoming many more members over the time. Because it's all, as I say, it's very, very new. So far so good, but we've only had 3 meetings. The early signs are there. But you're right, I could have been adding it to the failure question.
But it's certainly a big tick. Like I said, I'm a big supporter. It's fantastic. So and I'm sure it will continue to be a great success. We'll move on now, obviously, to like I said, just before we went on to that, I was saying one of the things about obviously achievements, the work ethic we've just talked about, and when you go through your ups and downs, but running different businesses, what I like to look at, obviously something potentially I again struggle with, but work-life balance. How do you strike a work-life balance? What is it that you do? What is one of the reasons that you chose to step down as CEO maybe and set up this, that you want to better, or different work?
I thought so. It was part of the plan. Look, I guess many people will relate to this. You're never off. You can go on a round the world cruise for 6 months. When it's your thing, you're never off. Unfortunately, that phone is on, and those emails will come in, and you can do the best you can to have slightly more downtime. But I think it's a losing battle. If you ever think that have you ever turned your phone off for a full week and then gone, you're just going to lie there every single night and worrying about what you're missing? So I think you just got to find a way that works for you. What I am doing more than ever before is, from a work-life balance perspective, it's always family first. Always has been. The reason why I didn't do the London thing was because I didn't want to do the 7 a.m. train back home at 8 o'clock at night with 3 young kids. Very fortunate to live where we do. So when the kids were very young, every single school assembly that they got a little certificate at, or the sports day or the Christmas play, that was for me. That's I wanted to be a dad, and that's what I was there for. Every single one, never missed a beat. I want that. That was really important to me. What's happening now is as the kids are much older, 17, 16 and 14, obviously dynamics change, but I find myself maybe working from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock one evening in order to free up an hour to be with them the next day, then so be it. Find myself pulling a 2 till 6 on a Sunday afternoon in order to be with them on a Friday afternoon because there's something going on with the family. Then so in terms of work-life balance, I think it's juggling the time, and I think the working week allows us to do that more. Very difficult when it was all 9 to 5. That was much harder. But I've also not known any different. So I picked the worst 2 jobs really for extracurricular activity in terms of the radio station and fundraising and the charity. So it's all around events and launches and morning, noon and night. It was just 4 times a week, whether it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, early evening, always out and about, and involve your family in it. I quite often have my wife and kids at events with me.
Amazing,
and they're visible, and a lot of my network will know my family. But yeah, I do try. My wife would kill me if she heard the bit about with the phone and the emails, because she does. She says to me, just ditch it. What's the worst that can happen? Well, actually, quite a lot.
Yeah, but it's not. I think when it's your own, like you said, it's like there's for me. I've almost accepted that this is who I am. So I've accepted that whatever you label it, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever you decide that is, that's actually who I am, and because that's who I am, I have to do that. That's what but I like spinning plates. I like having, I guess there's an element of me that wants to have these things going on and being able to check it. Of course, but similar to yourself, like I'm fortunate that I can drop the kids at school most mornings, be around to pick them up if I need to, not miss any of their plays, not miss any of them. But yeah, of course, then I have to work till 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes to get things done. Yeah, that's part. But we've got the choice to do that.
Exactly right, and it does mean that when you do have one of your 4 rounds of golf a week that you have, you can make up for it.
Networking, mate. I'm networking.
you make up for it at the weekend. But it's just reminding yourself all the time, why are we doing this? And surely, I'd love to think that we're doing this to build the best life you could possibly build for you and your family, in order to enjoy those family moments. That's what motivates and inspires me. I'm not doing it for any other reason that comes to mind. And I like those incentives for myself. It's how I built with teams as well. So I booked a holiday for next summer because of how things are at the moment, and that's the motivation. Build up to that point, and us going away next year.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. Well, okay. We're coming towards the end now, so just want to a couple of little bits. So, tell me what's the future hold for Ryan Hill?
I've got no idea, which I quite like. I think. I think in the short term, with Best of British events, the Best of British Members Club, the BBMC, and the BN1 Consulting, which is the business consultancy that I have. So it's kind of like a 3-pronged attack at the moment. I've got the events. Do you remember those Russian dolls that used to have that get smaller? So the event, I said, well, what do you do? It's like, well, I'm a big fan of the elevator pitch, so I'm not going to sort of try and go on for 5 minutes. But those Russian dolls, where it starts with Best of British Events, and that's the mothership, because they're the large-scale events and the 500s and all the rest of it. And then you take off a dole, and then it goes down to the 50 with the Members Club. And then you take off another dole, and it goes down to my consulting for businesses, where I'll get involved with their business if they want me to help raise their profile, drive profitability really, and look at the cost base. And so they all feed in and intertwine with each other. So I think certainly in the short medium term, those 3 elements will be keeping me very busy.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's great to. It's a great analogy actually, because people say to me about that. Wear some different hats and do it, and I guess all of them are business related. So they all sort of network and link in with, from the magazine to county business clubs to things. They all sort of link in. So
I'm sure you've got members of the county business clubs that would. Advertise in SBT and vice versa. They can cross pollinate really.
Yeah, no, exactly that, and it's great. Especially with we haven't not talked to you much about that being one consultant with you, but with your with your experience, what you've achieved over your career. That wealth of knowledge that you're able to go into businesses and help them, like you say, just going in and getting them to look at it like you would when you went into a CEO.
Well, that's it. I think if you ask me to which area would I like to specialise in, it's actually those businesses that are slightly struggling, but have either a very strong heritage or even a very bright future. That sort of waking a sleeping giant, really. And say to them, well, look, this is okay. If this is ground zero, what does it look like? And in terms of going into Juice or going into Rocking Horse and looking what I did with them, that's what I'd like to do with many other businesses over the years.
Sure, amazing. Right, so we always finish off with a couple of sort of quick fire questions.
Oh God.
First one, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur or someone wanting to start their own business?
This is where I made my my second only note that I alluded to earlier, and it's don't be afraid to fail.
Amazing.
That honesty, that'd be the single biggest piece of advice, because there's always 20 reasons not to,
Yeah.
and one reason to. And the reason to is always, well, this is going to work. It's going to be successful.
Yeah.
There's 20 reasons not to. And therefore, if you don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, you will always stay within the comfort zone and pick one of the 20
Yeah. Yeah.
or 19 of the 20, and you'll never, ever do it through fear of failure. Fear of failure can be the greatest motivator of all time. It really can. It can drive you to success. So don't be afraid to fail.
Amazing. I love that. Okay, and final one. Give me 3 traits that you think a person needs to be a good business person or entrepreneur.
3 traits. Don't be a what's it? No. I couldn't swear, that profanity. I think you do need resilience. Sort of going through this in real time, and you go through the journey again with you, and you're thinking, actually, resilience, because you're going to have all those knockbacks and all those barriers in every element of your life.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you can be successful without being resilient and coping with those knockbacks. And as I said earlier, in my experiences, how you respond to those. Another one I'd throw in there is, I think gut instinct is really underrated, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, but we all have gut instinct on whether it's going to go down that path or that path, or are we going to buy that business or that business, or are we going to hire that person or that person. Don't underestimate gut instinct, because if something this just feels wrong, I don't know why, it just feels wrong, it probably is.
That's really important. I've read a couple of books recently definitely that touched on that, and saying as most business owners, most entrepreneurs, it is relying on that gut.
Definitely. And the final one I throw in would be, it's that phrase, procrastination being the thief of time. I've had a lot of dealings with the NHS during my time at Rocking Horse, and my God, if it took them 9 months to make a decision, it was a good turn. And the same with some sort of local authorities or public sector out there. Can be very, very slow. And I think there is something in the entrepreneurial spirit about not procrastinating and being decisive, I'd say. So being decisive, if you think that is the right decision, trust that gut and make the decision.
And believe in it.
And believe and run with it. And then you get that sort of rapid change then, but you set your stall out nice and early. I remember, as I said earlier, when we moving the charity back into the centre of Brighton was one of the best things we did. But I decided within minutes that this is crazy that we're out in the sticks. We need to be back in the core area. So that decision was made incredibly quickly. Whereas, dare I say it, maybe some other people or some other entities might have dilly-dallied and sat on that decision for a period of months. We'll roll it over to the next quarterly board meeting. And before you know it, it's been a year. So, be decisive, resilient, and your gut. Let's end on the gut, Sam.
Let's
listen to that very small gut.
If only, mate, if only. Listen, what can I say, mate? It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. A brilliant episode, I'm sure. Look, there's so many amazing takeaways there, so much great knowledge, advice. It was, as always, just a pleasure to catch up with you. So, listen, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, and listen, wish you continued success, and looking forward to the next Best of British event.
And thank you for having me. And can I just say, well done for what you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic, and you certainly got that entrepreneurial spirit in abundance. And I hope everyone listening to this gives you the continued support that you so richly deserve. But thanks for having me this morning.